What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Evolve Mastery Podcast. I'm excited to be sitting down with a new friend of mine, and we had an amazing conversation. Today, I'm sitting down with Kristen Lee Mancerian, and she's a published author, consultant, speaker, the founder of the Elysian Retreat in Sedona, Arizona, who's known for her raw storytelling and transformational lens on love. Kristen also creates intimate weddings and family retreats that help to break generational cycles and rebuild trust, connection, and legacy. So guys, you know, I'm all about connection. I'm all about trust. I'm all about legacy and living in the integrity of your power, potential, and purpose in every area of your life. But Kristen is also a former Peace Corps volunteer, and she draws from her own journey through postpartum psychosis, cross-cultural marriage, and motherhood to help guide others towards healing that sticks. Because a lot of the times when we're growing, we'll take a few steps and then we go backwards. We'll take a few steps and we go backwards. But she really helps to guide people in a way that it helps them to stick and lock into that growth and that evolution. But she does this through different ways, through sacred space holding, somatic practices, and honest conversation. Kristen helps families and couples reimagine what's possible when love becomes the starting point. But guys, I'm excited to move into this next phase with you guys. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and dive right into this segment. And I hope you guys enjoy listening as much as I enjoyed having this conversation. Again, welcome to the Evolve Mastery Podcast.
I have the patience in my soul, 'cause I know that it's worth it. These affirmations let me know that I'm already perfect. I hear that one say yes I am, 100 miles up say yes I can. Is it all love? Say yes I am, yes I am, yes I am. I hear that one say yes I am, 100 miles up say yes I can. Is it all love? Say yes I am, yes I am, yes I am. It's my life, so I tell me I'm alright, and it helps me realize that I'm wealthy, rich in passion, rich in magic. It's my life, so I tell me I'm alright, and it helps.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Evolve Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Princeton Clark, and today I have another very special guest with me, Mrs. Kristen Mancurian, and I'm really excited about this guest, guys. I actually connected to her through her husband, who I'm a part of a men's group with, and he just talked about just how special she was and the journey that she's been taking. But guys, you guys know, I sit down and I talk with different people from different walks of life who are taking that journey of self-mastery. And as we know, with self-mastery comes a lot of opportunities for growth, comes a lot of challenges. And many people who choose this path, who choose to show up in the world as a light, as powerful beings who want to assist others, have also traversed their own path through the darkness to find that light within themselves. And Kristen is one of those people. So Kristen, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here today. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for such a warm introduction. I'm so excited to be here. I love what you said about self-mastery. I think that's the whole purpose of human beings, right? Like we are here to master ourselves, and we are given so many life lessons along the way for us to really learn what we are here to learn. And so I'm so excited to talk today about my journey as well as maybe in yours together. And yeah, I'm excited. Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to have a great conversation. I'm really excited about this one. Now, we know that together you and your husband host a retreat space, and you also cater to a lot of different people within that space. But your main focus professionally within that space, you've catered to intimate weddings. And I know there's so much more to it than that, but I want to give you some space because you are also a returning thought leader after having a baby and growing through different phases in your life. And so the people in podcast land, they don't know you. They don't know anything about you. And so this is the moment where I just want to give you some space to kind of tell us a little bit about who you are now. And then if you feel free, open up and share a little bit about your journey and what has brought you to this point.
I'm a mom, right? I'm also a daughter. I'm a creator. I'm an author. I'm a speaker. There's so many facets of me that I wish I could say. I can like literally write a whole long list. And I think that people listening in, sometimes they group themselves as like one role, but we actually fall into so many. And so currently I'm actually really focused on building a retreat space, continuing that journey. But later on, I really see myself speaking again on stages, writing another book. And when it comes to our retreat space, I'm so in love with it because we don't just serve intimate weddings. I think when people think about weddings, they think about the wedding industry, and it's a very performative space. I actually used to be a wedding planner in LA, and I planned 300-person weddings. And that was very stressful. And that experience taught me that a lot of weddings are based purely on performance. People are paying so much money just to have that feeling of like, wow, so many people came to my wedding. And the aspect of love is really lost. So we basically created a space where it's focused more so on the love itself and then legacy building. So I'm really excited to not just host weddings for people, but also have family retreats, as well as something I call the embodied facilitator, which is where retreat facilitators actually get to host their own retreats, and we create that retreat package for them. So there's a lot to come, but essentially I would like to say that our space is really meant for the person that's becoming.
I love that. Now, we often say you see the version of the person today and you hear the stories of why they got into the current work that they're doing. But we all know that the journey didn't start there. And I know you just recently went through a very challenging experience, and there's other experiences that you've grown through. But talk about major dark night of the soul experience. I'd love for you to kind of share, because I know there's a lot of people out in podcast land saying, and they're experiencing different things, and they're saying, how can I get to this point where I can share my message? How can I get to a point where I can start adding more light to the world by adding more light to my life? Because right now I feel kind of stuck. Right now I
Mm.
feel like I've been through so much, and I have so much potential. I know my soul is calling me higher, but how do I navigate through it? But just so they can connect more deeply to you and who you are and what's brought you to this point, I'd love to talk a little bit about what you just recently experienced, because I know there's a lot that we have in common as far as my story and your story, but you just recently came out of something very challenging. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about that if you would.
Yeah. So I really do think that darkness, you need darkness in order to have light, right? So I actually recently experienced something called postpartum psychosis, something that I never imagined would happen to me. I didn't even know that existed. I knew that postpartum depression was a thing. I knew that postpartum anxiety was a thing, but I did not ever think or believe that I would be someone that went through postpartum psychosis. But basically what happened was a year ago, I gave birth to my baby. I had a home birth in Sedona at our retreat space. And after the home birth, I actually had a retained placenta. So basically what that is that after you give birth to your baby, you also have to give birth to your placenta. And essentially, when my placenta came out, it looked completely intact. I mean, I spoke to a friend of mine who also had retained placenta, but she had her baby in the hospital. And mine was so small, it was only half a centimeter, that it was undetectable to the eye. So my midwife who delivered my baby didn't notice it. I didn't notice it, obviously, as a new mom. And so essentially this retained placenta stayed inside of me and it developed an infection that I did not know that I had. And so that infection alone caused a snowball effect of me having reoccurring infections. It caused me to bleed out. It caused me to go to the hospital to get it removed. And then in that process, the surgeon that removed my retained placenta actually lacerated my cervix. And I ended up actually bleeding out. And that's when I kind of like the psychotic break kind of started to happen. I didn't notice it at the time, and my husband didn't either, because we were just dealing with so many new things as parents, right? Like on top of all of that, we also had a new baby to take care of. So as a parent yourself, Princeton, you totally get it, right? Like babies require a lot of work, a lot of sleepless nights. So it's often very great to understand like what's really happening with me, right? Like I'm a new mom navigating like sleepless nights and breastfeeding. And then I'm also navigating this infection that was in my body. And on top of that, because of the surgeon messing up and like accidentally lacerating my cervix, it kind of prolonged my healing. And I actually continued to have reoccurring infections for many months. It probably took me around 4 months for all the infections to completely clear. And the most important thing I want people to gather is that reoccurring infections, especially for women in the uterus, can cause psychosis. So that was like the main culprit of what happened. And what was really scary is that in the state of Arizona and in any state, we treat mental health separately than your physical health. So I guess my symptoms were showing that I was having depression or anxiety. So when I went to the doctor, they were treating my mental illness, not knowing that I had like a reoccurring infection. And that was like kind of tying into my delusional thoughts.
That's, I just have to take a moment and just be present with that and breathe with you on that, because I can only imagine, as a man who doesn't have to go through any of what you experienced, I can only imagine the weight, the pressure, the confusion, the fear, the worry, being a new mom and having this baby that's depending on you, and having a husband that you want to show up for, and all while trying to figure out what the heck is happening to me right now. And then, of course, having people in the medical space who don't really understand. They're not really treating it correctly. And so it goes a lot longer than it should. I imagine that felt like such a lonely time, because you're experiencing this, but nobody can really understand. What do you think it is, as now clearly you're on the other side of that? What do you think I always say there's a gift in every challenge. There's something that happens that comes for us, or comes to us rather, when we experience tough moments like that in life. And sometimes we don't really know what that is, but I believe just from our conversations, you found a lot of yourself returning after this experience. So what was that like, coming out of it and facing those fears and still processing through being a mom, being a wife, but more than that, just being an individual, a spirit on this journey? What was that transition like as you began to heal?
Oh my gosh, like the transition was not black and white. It took a while. In my healing journey, it took so much, not just what I learned from this experience is obviously trust. I think trust is the forefront of everything. I came from a family that was very scarce, like my a scarcity mindset, I would say. I grew up middle class. Like I didn't come from like a very poor family. However, my ancestors were poor. And what I mean by that is my dad actually grew up in South Central. His experience of life was of scarcity, right? And so even though he like kind of broke that mold with his own family, meaning he went to USC and he got a good degree and like he got a good job, like a lot of my childhood was through his lens of scarcity, right? And so I really was brought up thinking that the world was untrustworthy, people were untrustworthy. And so my experience added to that, right? I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't trust nobody. I can't trust the doctor. I can't trust my husband. Like, and I really think that the postpartum period is such a huge initiation, not just for mothers, but for fathers as well. More so maybe if, on the mother's front in the beginning, because we're the ones actually giving birth. Maybe for fathers, it's a little bit later in life. But essentially what it taught me was that I really needed to go through this initiation. It was very dark, so dark where maybe I don't wish it upon anyone, because it has brought me to a place where it was like I almost died essentially. I was so lost in my thoughts that I had thoughts that my husband was drugging my daughter. I had thoughts that my husband was part of the Illuminati, like really, really crazy thoughts. And it's funny to think back on it now. But at the time I really believed it. And as someone that's like part of the spiritual world, like when you really believe your thoughts, it can become like a really scary thing. And so to
Mhm.
answer your question, what I learned from this whole experience is that any big change, when either it's birth, whether it's getting married, marriage is a huge one too that people don't realize. It's a portal, it's an initiation, it's a new chapter. And really need to look at those emotions behind our behaviors. And that's also why I'm so passionate about what we're doing now at the retreat center, because most people bypass these big initiations and then it kind of like comes out sideways later. So to answer your question, that's what I basically learned from my whole experience.
Learning to lean in and trust the process. Also, don't try to escape. I love the word initiation.
Yeah.
That one of my favorite quotes is, if you change the way you see things, the things you see will change.
Yep.
Imagine if everyone saw challenging moments or those quote unquote dark night of the soul moments as initiations into a new version of you, initiations into a new reality. And they begin to introspectively ask the question, what is this teaching me about how I get to show up now? What is
Right.
this teaching me about where I get to heal now? What is this
Yeah.
teaching me about what I must let go of now in order to step into this reality to be this next version of myself? And it's so huge because you have to trust yourself. And a lot of the times, this is what's happening. Ultimately, our spirit is trying to bring us back to ourselves, back to that inner child, back to that freedom of expression, back to the fullness of what we are. And with all the things that are in the way, situations, circumstances, emotional trauma, mental trauma, physical trauma, the things that can happen, there's a multitude of things that can happen in our life. I love that word initiation because it's initiating a process. It's bringing you back to yourself. And that's so beautiful. Now, we know that that's a recent experience that you had. But when we first spoke, you said you heard my story. And of course, for my podcast listeners, you guys have heard me talk about what I've experienced as far as the abuse, the molestation, the deep depression, and even being an alcoholic and all those different things. If you've been here long enough, if you haven't, go back, check out previous episodes. But I know that's something that we also connected on. And you've definitely had a journey just like I've had leading up to that. Because again, we have people from every walk of life that listen to this podcast. What were some other experiences that you had that, because you are a thought leader and a speaker, and you're returning back to that space. And so I know you speak a lot about healing, a lot about owning your power, a lot about really taking this life and honoring each breath, honoring the moment, getting present with yourself. But we also know that gaining that wisdom does not come without many initiations. And so give us a little bit of your background, how you were raised, some of the things that you experienced that open the door for you to be that thought leader, that guide, as I say, for so
Mm.
many others.
Yeah, I love that you say that. And I loved our conversation beforehand because it really opened with a window of like the possibility of what we could talk about today. And to answer your question, I grew up, I think on the outside, people see it like, oh, she had a really normal childhood, right? Like her parents were middle class, she went to college, but there was so much underneath that no one saw. And I think that is the part that's the hardest for me, that the trauma that I went through was so different because, so for example, right, when I went through my postpartum psychosis, I had to go inpatient to an inpatient hospital. I was amongst other people that had mental health issues, and a lot of them came from families of like substance abuse, molestation, like very similar walks of life, like for example, like you. I didn't go through any I didn't have any history of like substance abuse because my parents didn't believe in that. Like we're Asian and we're allergic to alcohol. So in a way, I almost feel like God blessed me in that sense because I never got to experience that. However, what I've learned recently is that you don't have to have substance abuse to experience trauma, because something that I used to cope for many years without realizing that was super unhealthy was actually like my toxic thoughts about myself. So as an Asian American, I grew up with a dad that was very critical. So nothing was ever good enough for him. And I actually was abused as a child. My dad didn't drink, right? So he didn't even have a coping mechanism. Imagine if you didn't get to drink. You just bottled up all your emotions. And of course, you're going to lash out on your family, right? So I was like on the receiving end of that. Like my whole dad's line was abusive. And again, it was from a lot of struggle. It was from a lot of just coming from a place where they didn't know how to express their emotions. And so a lot of it came from abuse. And I want to talk about the substance abuse part too, because I didn't grow up with alcohol, I didn't have any place to cope. Like for me, it was just all in my mind. I was just like in my mind all the time. And it came out in so many different ways. It came out in anger. It came out from criticism. I remember when my husband and I first started dating, I was just criticizing him all the time, thinking that that was like super normal, but it was from a lot of trauma. Like it was a trauma response. And so I think that because of so much mental trauma growing up, I also experienced depression. I also experienced anxiety, but it was masked. It was masked because as an Asian American, I had to look the part. I had to be a good girl. We were often seen as very like silent and we don't really express our emotions, but all of that was bottled up. And I really do think part of it was released during my postpartum. It kind of like it had to come out some way. So there you go.
Well, one thing we know is you can't hold it down for long, especially when you have a calling, when you have a purpose. Even if you aren't even aware of any of those things, the more you push down, it's eventually got to find a way to come out. And
Mhm.
it's those moments where we get hit, we get blindsided by life or by an experience, that a lot of that stuff begins to come up. And it's so crazy how you can really deceive yourself into thinking you're okay. Because again, the masks I learned how to create masks really well when I was in high school because of my deep depression. I was the person that made everybody laugh. I was the person that showed up. I defended people, and I would cry myself to sleep at night, and nobody saw that. Nobody saw that version of me. And I did that for years. But unlike you, alcohol, drugs, those were my coping mechanisms because I was
Right.
trying to find an escape. And so, in a way, it's kind of a blessing that you didn't have that coping mechanism because it's so easy to get lost in it. Because at the end of the day, if all I have is my masks, when I'm at home or when I'm by myself, it doesn't matter if I have a mask because the masks are not for me, it's for everybody that I'm experiencing. But when I'm by myself, the only thing I can do is face myself.
Mhm.
So when the awakening point comes for someone who doesn't have those other coping mechanisms, it can be a massive awakening, a massive shift at once because they don't have anything else to turn to. And so,
Right.
yeah. And so I know that you experience a lot of that, but go ahead, continue.
I was gonna say that madness can also come in the form of hustle or like to
Hmm.
like constantly doing things, right? Because I didn't drink, like basically drinking made me break up out into hives. In a way, it's a blessing. And again, I still feel very blessed that I don't turn to alcohol. But turning to like an obsession over working or work like being a workaholic, again, people might think, oh, that's such a good thing, but we're human beings. We burn out. And just like what you said, it's going to come out one way or another. And in my case, I really think that my postpartum was not just the retained placenta in a way. Yes, that happened. But when I look at it from a spiritual lens, it was almost like I couldn't avoid it. It was part of my karma. It was part of like what I had to go through in order to be where I am today.
Wow. Talk about not only having a higher level of awareness, but also taking a high level of accountability through the experience. I think that's something that we often run from is that accountability and also that responsibility. I was recently talking about this and I said, if you break that word responsibility, if we say my life is my responsibility, that means my life is based on my ability to respond. How I choose to respond to it is creating my reality. And a lot of people you hear, they say, I know I create my own reality. I create my own reality. But do you understand the magnitude of what that means? How you think, how you speak, how you respond to your life in every single now moment is creating the reality of the next now moment and the future now moment. And so when you're able to take that, look at it, of course, hindsight is 2020 also, and there's a lot of wisdom and downloads we get during when as we're coming out of it. But even if during it, as you begin to heal, you can say, wow, like these things happen. It's a part of the process. This has been my journey. But you start looking at, okay, how am I choosing to respond? You start looking at how am I choosing to think? You start taking accountability for your actions because
Yeah.
it's in that space of accountability that you begin to honor and respond differently to the life that you've been given in this point. And I know that a lot of my clients are women. I'd say 95% of the people that I work with are women. And so I know listeners out there right now that are listening to this, and also men, we all grow through things. And I know men don't often talk about things, but I'd love for you to lean a bit more into as you begin to acknowledge and become more aware of the opportunity that you had been given, going back to that word you used, it initiated a process of awareness. What was something that you begin to learn about yourself through this process that maybe someone else out there, another woman or another man who is going through a dark night, or maybe they're playing the victim. They're pointing the finger at everything external. What would be a piece of advice that you would give them based on what you've learned and how you handled the trauma and how you handled the, I guess we could say the initiation of what you
Yeah.
experienced?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I was going through my initiation and through my dark night of the soul, I was not taking any responsibility. I think that what I would like to say is that everything that's hard in life will pass. Like life is cyclical, right? Like if you're going through a hard time right now, just know that it's not going to be forever. I will say that when I was going through what I was going through, it feels like forever. When you're in it, it definitely feels like forever. And the thing is that what's really hard is that when you're in it, I remember that even when I was going through my postpartum psychosis and I was like literally having delusional thoughts, I was still asking myself, okay, like, what is this trying to teach me? What is this trying to teach me? And like continuing to ask these questions. But what's really crazy to me though is not just self-trust. It's also the trust in God, trust in the universe, trust in whoever you believe in. Because self-trust can only, in my opinion, take you so far, right? Like that to me is like the ego. But when you're able to trust something outside of you and just really trust in life itself, I really do think that life is speaking to you. Right now, I'm in the process of going through a course in miracles. I don't know if you're familiar with that book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on day 10 right now, still in the very beginning. But when I start to really play with life and like be open to what life has to give me, there are literally teeny mini like miracles happening in my life every day. I swear, I feel like the universe is just talking to me all the time. And I think that most of the time people miss that. They're so busy in their everyday life that they're not realizing that there are signs everywhere. There's a quote that says like, if you are looking for flowers, you'll always find them. I really believe that when you're going through the dark night of the soul moment, that is really meant for you. I like to say that my postpartum psychosis was like the best thing that happened to me, because if it wasn't for that, I would never be able to see life the way that I see it now. Granted, it sucks at the time. Like I said, I almost faced death. But I do think that if you are going through a dark night of the soul, just know that it's not forever. It's a season of your life that you need to tend to it, whether it's just staying in it, staying in those emotions. Maybe the lesson for you is learning how to just be with your emotions. That alone is
Mm-hmm.
really, it's like challenging work, right? And know that it will never last. It's there for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, so much that I want to say to that. That was good. But I specifically loved how you spoke about having that divine connection to the external, realizing that there is something greater than you. Before you had a name, you had a purpose. Before you didn't come from nothingness. Your
Right.
soul didn't come from nothingness. And personally, that's something that I realized as well when I failed to commit suicide. That moment, after that experience, I realized that something greater than me, life, source, universe, God, whatever pronoun people want to use, I believe the finite mind can't even begin to comprehend the infinite. But we're experiencing it every day. It's moving in every experience. And our spirit, I firmly believe this, knows and understands every challenge before we ever even face it. And if you are given, there's a passage biblically that says, God will not put more on you than you can bear. So when I
Mm,
think about that, I say spiritually, everything that I am experiencing, if I've experienced these challenging times, it was because something greater than me knew that I was strong enough to make it through it. Every negative thing or perceived negative thing that I have experienced, there's at least 1 million people out there struggling with just one of those things that my spirit knew it was strong enough to make it through. It's like the quote, you've made it through 100% of the things that you didn't think you would make it through. And you're still here now. You're
right.
still here now. And so people like you and I who have traversed these dark paths, we now, because we found our light in the darkness, we get to help other people. And One thing that I want to say to the podcast listeners out there today is if you are experiencing challenges in your life, be it relational, spiritual, mental, emotional, financial, whatever that challenge is, your spirit is completely able to handle it. But you got to disconnect from the ego. You got to disconnect from this idea that something's wrong with me, my life sucks. You got to disconnect from playing the victim. You don't understand, this person did this and this happened to me. Understand that everything you've experienced, I always say for myself, my pain was preparation for my purpose.
Yeah.
There is something being called out of you. Something being called out of you. And I like the analogy of the vessel that breaks and all the cracks are filled with gold. You are going to be better for what you've experienced. And I know, just like Kristen said, it doesn't feel like it when you're in it. It didn't feel like it when I was struggling with deep depression, couldn't sleep at night, having to drink myself into oblivion just to be able to function, having to stay high just to feel like I was still alive. It didn't feel great in that experience. It didn't feel great when I tried to take my life. It didn't feel great overcoming the abuse and the molestation. But on the other side, I realized, and just like you said, I am grateful for every experience that I've had, because if it were not for those things, the person that you guys get to hear, the light you get to see, the smile, the passion, the inspiration I get to share, and that Kristen gets to share, it wouldn't be there. And so what I want to challenge everyone listening to do today is ask yourself, as we've said before, what is this challenge offering me the opportunity to evolve into? What wisdom is it gaining, or am I gaining? What truth is being spoken to my soul right now? How have I been neglecting myself? How have I been putting other people or circumstances before me? How have I been neglecting and not honoring each breath in my life? Because it's something, you get one life to be this version of you. And it's so easy to get caught up in the process of survival that we forget how to live. And what we want for you guys is for you to live, for you to understand that you are special. You are divinely unique. There never has been, nor will there ever be another version of you on this planet. And so we just want to encourage you to be the best version of you. And again, Kristen, coming back to you, I know you there's a lot that you have to share, but what do you feel your purpose is in this season of your life, as far as the impact that you want to have and the space that life currently has you in?
Yeah. So right now, I'm definitely in a season of reaching people that want to end the cycle, whatever that cycle may look like for them, right? Because the thing is that when it comes to either marriage, relationships, we often take so much from our past, from what we see growing up from our parents. And I really, as a mom now, it's just my purpose is just so much stronger, because I do not want to see my daughter repeat what happened to me in my childhood. And that means that I need to do the work, right? It has nothing to do with her or my husband. Yes, my husband is half of the equation, but I can't force him to do something that he doesn't want to do. So really my main goal is to make sure that I'm mastering myself in terms of healing a lot of my family trauma and creating a space where other people can do the same. So that's also why the Elysian Retreat has evolved so much after postpartum. It's no longer a space for just intimate gatherings. I think that was the whole intention before I became a mom, but now it's a place of legacy building. It's a place of healing a lot of generational trauma, starting from your wedding day. It may seem really heavy. That's also why with our weddings, it's much more lighter, and it's much more focused on like the couple itself and like what kind of legacy you want moving forward. But we also have family retreats where we actually unwind a lot of generational trauma through modalities like CFT. But most importantly, I think that when it comes to our embodied facilitators, the facilitators that choose our space to run their retreats, they need to understand that any big life initiation, so to speak, is a way for them to be able to show up very greatly for their people, right? So again, it's just It's amazing because I really do feel very lucky that my life has turned out this way. That the fact that I had to go through such a hard thing, not just physically, right? But mentally. I do think sometimes what you said about how like God doesn't give you much more than you can handle. When I was going through that, I really, really felt, okay, there must be no God because I'm handling so much. I can't bear it. And when you talk about suicide, that was actually something that I contemplated as well. I went through such a dark hole. My thoughts became so delusional that I contemplated that. And I really think that God really put me in that position because it's such an extreme level of things that I kind of like didn't get to navigate. I didn't get to sit with my emotions growing up. All of these things pushed me to be still. It pushed me to look at myself versus hustling. During that time when I was in postpartum, I was not working at all. My husband carried most of the things, like the baby stuff. My team carried everything when it came to work. And there were many times where I felt so ashamed of myself. I'm like, there's no way I can like have this retreat center. I literally told my husband, I'm like, we need to close our business down. I don't feel like I'm in integrity to like have people come to our retreat space and heal when I'm like in the middle of my crisis. And so I guess to kind of wrap everything up, whatever stage you are in, just know that you are worthy of healing, right? You are worthy of healing, not just yourself, but all of your family, generational trauma. Because in order for you to really make a difference in the world, you need to heal that part of you, not just yourself, but your family. Most people want to just focus on teaching what they know without healing the parts of themselves that are still keeping them back. And that's where I really want to help people with.
I love that. And I love that you shared that bit about judging yourself and critiquing yourself because you weren't able to work. You weren't able to show up. You started questioning your worthiness, your capacity or your capability in showing up for others. And this is something that I often say. It's okay. We have to get to a point where we're okay not being okay sometimes, where we understand that life is going to have certain ebbs and flows on this growth journey. And sometimes you need to pause because there's power in the pause. There's
Yeah.
power in the pause. There's presence in the pause. And when these things come and it feels like life just kind of halts everything, that's life saying, I love you so much that I need you to focus on you right now. I need
Mm,
you to be still. I need you to just grow through this process. Allow yourself to feel what's happening, what's coming up for you, and don't judge yourself for being human. You are a spirit on a journey having this human experience, and there is a plethora of things that you're going to experience positively or negatively, however you want to quote unquote label them. But there are so many different human experiences that we're going to have, and all of them are not going to be favorable. All of them are not going to feel good, and so you have to get to this place where on the spiritual journey, you understand that anything that does not deserve that anything that does not serve you, doesn't deserve you, is going to be brought up. It's going to be brought up for you to feel through, for you to address, and for you to heal. And that's such a beautiful opportunity, but we have to change our perspective around it. And also what I want to say, and podcast listeners, you've probably heard me say this before, true awakening and true healing is waking up and realizing there was nothing wrong with you. Because I think a lot of the times we grow through these experiences, and because we have a human experience that's not favorable, we start believing that something's wrong with us, that something's not right, or that I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough. No, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just an experience. It's a season. And just like naturally in nature, there are seasons. There's a season for things to be born and for things to grow. There's a season for things to die to make room for the new growth of the next season, so on and so forth. There's a season of showers that come to water the seeds that have been sown prior so that in the next season things can grow. And so you're growing through seasons as well. So when these challenging moments come, lean into the season. You are not broken. You are not unworthy. You're being given an opportunity to pause, rest in the season. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay not to be a perfectionist, and to feel like things have to be a certain way. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well, Kristen.
yeah. I love that you say that. Here's the thing. That's something that I recently learned as well. I used to really judge myself. Like, for example, I really do think that I have undiagnosed ADHD. I think my husband does too. We both kind of was like, I think we both have it. But here's the thing, like, so what? Like, sometimes I like judge ourselves. I'm like, "Oh, we're like messy people, or like, we're not as organized. Like, we need to be like X, Y, and Z." And then, like, when I learned this concept, it really freed us and it really freed me because I'm like, okay, so what if we have ADHD? Okay. And so what if we let our daughter like play in the mud and it's not like perfect? Once I really sat with that, it's like these are just judgments that we have on ourselves, that we need to be a certain way. We need to be organized. Our car needs to be spotless. Our room needs to look like this, right? What if we're just easy on ourselves, and what if we're just gentle, and what if like those are our greatest powers? Sometimes I look at my mess and I'm like, that's the whole reason why I can be creative and I can think the way I think. It's because of my creative mess. And so oftentimes I think that we often are way too hard on ourselves. Instead of saying like, oh, I should be more like this, or I should be more like so and so, just relax into like, this is who you are, and that's why you're such an amazing human being. This is what makes who you are, and that's the most beautiful thing, because someone
Mhm.
like me is different than my husband. Like, my husband can do things that I can never do, and vice versa. And once we are able to own that, that's when magic happens.
Mhm. It's amazing. It's so awesome that you bring up the ADD, ADHD, the labels that they've put on us in
Yes.
society. But because I was medicated for that, I was the same way, so hard on myself. Oh, because I was constantly told you have a learning disability. You're all over the place. And coming up, I was on medication for ADD, ADHD, hyperactivity from the time I was in first grade up until the eighth grade. And during that time, like, I felt like a zombie on that medication. I did not feel like myself. My hands would get really cold. My feet would get really cold. Even my family would recognize it when my parents would make me take it. They'd be like, you put that boy on those pills today, didn't you? He doesn't even look like himself. He doesn't sound like himself. And one day in my pre-algebra class, my aunt was my teacher in my pre-algebra class. And so I'm sitting sideways in my desk, I'm drawing, and I'm just kind of humming to myself. And then in between, my friend Mike was sitting behind me and we're having a conversation. Well, she tries to call me out in front of the class and make an example of me. And she calls me up to the board to answer a problem. Not only did I answer the problem, I showed the class a different way to do it that was faster to get the same answer. She wrote up a referral and sent me to the office. But as I sat in that office, and I didn't understand the magnitude of this download until after my life changed, but I realized I didn't have a disorder. I didn't have a problem. I actually had a gift.
Yeah.
I was able to tune into multiple things at once. I had extrasensory perception. And so I was really sensitive. I was a deep empath. And so the linear system of education wasn't favorable for someone like me, to the system that wanted me to focus on one thing when I had the capacity to see a much bigger picture and to tune into my environment in its entirety. I looked like a problem. They told me I had an issue and I bought into it. My parents bought into it. But I realized that, look, I'm a divine creator and I'm so connected to my creative prowess that I'm less focused on the minute things that so many other people say makes you productive or makes you a good student or a good employee, that I automatically would rebel from it. I was never a great employee because I was so connected to the environment. And if other people were hurting or not being as productive, and then the supervisors or managers were coming down on them, I would speak up every single time. I lost a few jobs because of it, because I've always been an intercessor. I've always been someone who stood in the gap for others. But yeah, that thing, there's so many people who are taking on that label. And it's like, no, you're just a deep empath who has a high level of extrasensory perception. And it's very easy for things to pull your attention. But what helped me was meditation. I
Mm.
meditated a lot. I got silent. And I wasn't, in the beginning, I thought, oh man, I got to stop all these negative thoughts. My mind is wandering. And then I realized that in meditation, it's not about stopping the thoughts. It's actually about stepping out of the thoughts, becoming aware of the thoughts and observing them, just like you would a movie playing in your mind. And I recognized that as actually taught meditation for 6.5 years, once I started learning these different things, but just really how we start our day when we are these sensitive beings, It's very important for us to pause at the beginning of the day to really sit with, okay, what's coming up for me? What thoughts are processing? What are the fear-based thoughts? What are the thoughts of worry? What are the thoughts of unforgiveness or resentment? What are the thoughts that are processing in my brain right now? Because the brain, like this computer, is just a system. And when we become observant and we can look at what's happening, what we allow ourselves to do is to take back control from the brain, and we can really start putting our attention to what serves us. And that's really what helped me. And there's some days where I would wake up and my bed wasn't made. There was a mess in the kitchen. And instead of saying, oh, your house is so messy, like you need to do this, you need to do that, I would really get connected to myself, and really just observe those negative thoughts, that negative programming. And then I'll just ask myself, okay, this is my life. Nobody else is in my house right now. But the question I would ask is, but does it feel good to me? Does
Yeah.
it feel good for this not to be done? Okay. No, 'cause it doesn't. My environment feels a little cluttered. Yeah, I can be creative in my office and I can do these different things, but how can I position myself so that this doesn't happen as much? But it became more of a much more conscious process, because there would be some days where I'd say, okay, I'm going to worry about that tonight because right now I'm in flow and I'm just going to be in flow. I'm not going to be put so much pressure on myself. Oh, I got to get this done, or I got to get this done, or I'm not productive, or I'm not a good dad, or I'm not a good, well, I'm not a woman. So, but in your case, I'm not a good mom. And so it's really, the more we become aware of that and we begin to honor the gift of that extrasensory perception, the gift of that higher state of connection to the world around us, we then start making more intentional decisions energetically to be in that space, and to how to honor that space of any experience, our home, whether it be our homes, our relationships, or our emotional state, our mental state. We become highly aware, but more in tune with who we are and where we are at any phase in our life. And we have a powerful capacity to do that, as to where people who are very by the book, they're very rigid. When life says it's time to move or it's time to shift, it's much harder for them to shift because they're so in that. And growing up Asian, A-type personalities, things got to be perfect. That's why you think, I might be undiagnosed, I might have a problem. No, you're really actually very gifted. You're very gifted. And it's a reason you have the heart that you have. And even with Roger, your husband, he's such an amazing person, but he's also a very deep empath. He
Mm.
feels things deeply. And he and I related on several levels as men, because he's actually experienced some of the same things that I've experienced. And I'm like, wow, this dude is so sensitive. Emotionally, he processes things very deeply. And so it's, you guys are both very special individuals. But what I know about two very special individuals is that life can present some obstacles, especially when you're both very sensitive. You're both traversing the same path. And like you said, marriage is an initiation. It's two worlds coming together, colliding. Two people who see the world and who have experienced the world in two completely different ways. And you have to enter into that space not rigid. You have to enter into that space not being a perfectionist or thinking your way is right, and really building the bond of communication that creates and facilitates a space for both of you to heal and be able to communicate what you're growing through. Because initially what will happen is, if people are growing through that phase and they come together and those worlds collide, it's very easy for the ego to take root, and then you're just butting heads. You're just constantly against each other. And it's even outside of marriage, close relationships in general are your greatest mirror. And
Mhm.
so I'd love for you, as a wife, what do you think are some of the greatest mirrors you've experienced in relationships? Because I know that there's a lot of women out there right now, like, girl, you've been through a lot. You're married, you just had a baby, you went through all these experiences. What are some lessons that you've learned from being a wife that you believe you wouldn't have learned any other way?
My gosh, where do I begin? Yeah. Okay, first of all, yes, my husband is also deeply empathic. We both are, right? And it's so funny because we put into ChatGPT the other day how to navigate a neurodivergent relationship. I get it. We shouldn't be putting labels, but in a way, labels systemize things, right? It helps us like
Hmm.
understand things from our logical mind. Anyway, to answer your point about like mirrors, my husband is completely opposite than I am. First of all, not only are we female and male, we come from two different cultures that are extremely different. Asian Americans, or just Asians in general, we're very critical by nature. I think it's like this, like we struggled for so many decades, or not just decades, but lifetimes, and our ancestors, that we just really think that like it's all about perfectionism. That's how we show our love, right? We think that by criticizing you, by feeding you more, by doing your laundry, like that's how we show you love, right? And then on the
Mhm.
other hand, we have my husband, who is an Armenian, and Armenians are very, I don't know if anyone knows much about the Armenian culture, but there's the genocide, and then there's also like Armenians like to, how would I say this? They're very prideful. And I would say that they're very like emotional and like family oriented. And there's some similarities across our cultures, but I would say that he has mirrored the parts of myself that I'm still getting to know. So, for
Mm.
example, he's, I would say, much more softer in the sense that he's less critical of himself. He's much more like go with the flow. And again, I have like grown, I feel like, a lot with him. But when we first started dating, I was just so hard and he was so soft. And we were constantly just like, I was just like criticizing him all the time. And he was just like getting really like sensitive with my criticism. And I would just say that I think that when we're able to see our partners as really just like deep parts of ourselves, then we can actually be a lot kinder to them, because he is basically the part of me that has not been expressed, right? Like he has really taught me how to be much more softer, how to be more graceful. And I have taught him how to be maybe like a little bit more self-responsible, or like a little bit constructive criticism, right? Like, so, and then whenever he gets like feels attacked by me, or he feels like, oh, like my wife is like so annoying, it's the part of him that needs to like rise up and kind of like correct himself, right? And whenever I'm annoyed at him for not taking more action, or whatever the case may be, it's the part of me that needs to soften. So I don't know if that makes sense, but whatever relationship you're in, whether you're married or you're dating someone, that person is really just a mirror to the parts of yourself that needs the most love.
I love that. And it's awesome how you share there. This is where I typically dive deep. And my partner and I, we talk a lot about the masculine and the feminine dance as a mirror, because as men, what I've realized, because I used to be very reactionary because I was super sensitive, but I was never as a man given a space to really operate in my emotions. If I felt down or felt upset, typically it would come out as anger or as ego. Like I felt like I had to fight for myself all the time. And so I never really had a space to show myself. And as a result, I didn't really develop into my masculine, because a lot of men think that being hard is masculine, but actually being vulnerable is masculine. Being in your vulnerability, being able to take the mask of strength off to lean into that, because that's where you meet yourself. And what I realize is that as a man, I evolved so much. And one thing that, my partner often says is the way that you hold space, the way you are so solid when I come and something comes up for me and you create space for me to talk about it and have the hard conversations. She's like, I just love that because I can lean into it. And
Mhm.
I know that if it had not been for me learning how to be vulnerable, learning how to hear my partner, it was so important, because I realized this person who I'm now saying I want to dedicate my life to, she's going to see things in me that nobody else sees. She's going to feel things from me that nobody else feels, and vice versa. And so I really had to learn not to take it personally in my past relationships. But what that taught me is to be more present. If my partner comes to me, and this is for all the couples or those who want to get married out there, if your partner comes to you as a man, and women be aware of this as well, but if your partner comes to you, men, and they're expressing something that is mirroring to them, or maybe they're seeing the potential in you and they see the capacity that you have to be so much more, it's not to challenge that, but really what I started seeing is, wow, like you really love me enough to address the things that I don't see. You really love me enough to address the things that I don't see. And what that allowed me to do now in my new relationship is when something comes up, even for me, that I would typically try to be strong and navigate through and I got it, I'll figure it out. Now I found early in our relationship, her mirror to me allowed me to share things emotionally that I had never shared with anyone. And
Mm.
vice versa, my mirror to her allowed her to do the same thing without judgment. When things come up, it allowed me the ability to just listen and be present and to hear beyond the words energetically, because even though women communicate with words, they communicate more energetically through emotion than they do with words. They can
Yeah.
say something with words and emotionally feel something that's completely opposite, but I'm vulnerable and connected to myself. The more deeply I connect to myself, the more deeply I can connect to her. And as deep empaths, this is the gift that you guys bring. And so I imagine that just being married, having a kid, there's a lot of things that are coming up. And yeah, I'd say marriage and any really close relationship is going to mirror a lot of different things to you for both of you to heal. I don't think you'll heal as much as you can with someone
Well,
because
I
they
was
are your greatest mirror.
Yeah, I was gonna respond and say that when you say how you used to react like very like kind of your reaction is like almost like defensiveness, right? So to speak. My husband also displayed some of that too in the earlier days. And what I realized is that is comes from a lot of like survival mentality.
Hmm.
You need to defend yourself when you're trying to survive. And so once we're able to shift from survival to thriving, then you're no longer needing to defend yourself because you're realizing that the other person is really just projecting what's going on with them. Most of the time, like when I'm annoyed at my husband, it's like my own thing or his own thing, right? We're just bouncing back like from each other. And that's something that I really learned from like A Course in Miracles too. Like a lot of our thoughts are not even present thoughts. They're thoughts from
Uh,
the past that are echoing. I can be annoyed about this cup, for example, and it has nothing to do with what's like the cup itself, but my perception of the cup from the past. It's all just coming up now from the future. So a lot of the times when people are thinking that they're having a specific thought or they're angry at their spouse for a specific reason or they're annoyed at them, it has nothing to do with what's actually happening. It's actually from the past that's coming up, whether it's a childhood wound or whether it's something that happened last week. So, anyways, I wanted to like to touch on that because a lot of people don't realize that when they're coming from a place of defensiveness, it's really like a survival thing, right? They're wanting to
mhm.
protect themselves.
Yeah. I know I created a framework for myself and I now apply it to my relationships when it comes to growing. Like, I know I want to be a better, wiser, more connected, more conscious, more aware version of myself. And so I started asking myself when I would face challenges or life brought something my way that wasn't favorable, I would ask myself, how is this challenging me to be more loving? How is it challenging me to find more peace? How is it challenging me to be more grateful? Is this situation presenting an opportunity for me to be better, or is it a distraction from what I truly desire? And now I bring that into our relation, my partners and I relationship, where I always say if something comes up, if we feel ourselves getting pulled into ego or doing this, the first question we ask is this making us better? Is this
Mm.
bringing us deeper into love or disconnecting us from it? Is this creating more peace for us? Is it enhancing the vision that we have together, or is it hindering it? And if it's anything coming up that's going to hinder us loving more deeply, connecting more deeply, having more gratitude for the experience of this engagement, this relationship, then it's not worthy of us. It's not. And immediately we stop and we ask the question, what can we do right now to go deeper? What can we do right now to love on each other? What can we do right now to bring more peace? Because at this point, it's not about me, my, and I. It's about us, we, and our. It's about oneness. How can we become one in this moment? And sometimes, men, it's not about fixing anything. It's about just being present, holding space, and being quiet. Just be quiet. Sometimes they just want you to listen, not fix. They need the space to release what's in them. Those emotions, as they get closer to you, they don't want to carry a lot of the negative feelings and negative emotions, but you become a mirror that gives them a space where they feel safe enough to release it. And that's what we have to pay attention to as men. When women feel safe with us, they feel safe unloading everything. And as men, we must now learn how to love ourselves, love them, understand that spiritually they're on a journey just like us. And ultimately for them, it's about creating a space where they can release that. And then we can ask the deeper questions. What do you think that's coming up from?
Yeah.
Because like you said, it's not most of the time, it never has anything to do with what's happening right now. It's something that's happened in the past that's now coming up and showing itself. And so it's like, really, I now get to be a partner to take that journey with her. Babe, what do you feel that's coming up from? How can I be of support? Do you just need me to
I was
listen?
gonna say, yeah, exactly. I mean, like our emotions are like it's like the weather, right? It can change like anytime. Like sometimes it's raining, sometimes it's sunshine. I think when men are able to just like see it that way, then they could just pull out an umbrella, right? And be like, okay, it's raining. And that there's nothing attacking you. And it is hard. I get it. Like I think I try to put myself in my husband's shoes. And it's definitely probably hard for him sometimes when I'm going through one of my emotional moments, right? And he has to hold space for it. And in a way, I think that God designed us in that way for women to be highly emotional, and sometimes women can feel like, oh, I don't want to be emotional, or like, but this is who we are, right? Like we are capable of things that men are not capable, or vice versa. And I think what you shared about how men holding space for women, I really do think that it's so needed because we do feel safe with you guys. And like feeling safe with you also means that you would have to see the parts of us that are not very happy or are not very joyful, so to speak. You can't get all of the good
Yeah.
stuff and not get, right?
Right. That's where the work is. And I tell anybody, you want a serious relationship, you want to get married, get ready to do the work. I feel like people nowadays jump from one person to the next person the moment something gets hard. And I'm like, you do realize that that's a gift. Like you get to spend your life with this person, and that means you get to see the depth of this person. And instead of labeling it good, bad, challenging, ugly, whatever you imagine that it's a beautiful journey. If I'm taking a journey and I'm traversing a mountainous experience, there may be some smooth points. There may be some major peaks that I got to work a little harder to get over. But once I make it to the top and start to come down, it becomes a little easier. And in the beginning, you're climbing a steep mountain in a lot of cases. When those
Yeah.
emotions start coming up and the terrain gets a little rocky, you better be ready. You better have on the right boots to travel that terrain or traverse that terrain because, you're well equipped to do it. But man, I personally, I'm so in love with love and I'm so in love with my life. I'm so in love with the journey of this life that no matter what I experience, it's always about what I'm getting to learn. It's always about what I'm getting to step into and the opportunity that I get to be a light in my life and in my partner's life and in other people's lives. But it takes a lot of work, self-mastery, creating that space where you have the self-awareness, the self-discipline, the self-love, and the capacity to meet other people in that same space, but also learning how to be patient with other people because your speed is not their speed. I don't care how much you love each other, your journey is not their journey. And when you can create that space to say, okay, I have some things that I want to discuss and I don't know how it's going to be received, but I just want to preface what I'm about to say with I love you so much. And I'm just at a phase in this journey where I don't know if I don't know if any of this makes sense, but I'm so grateful that I get to take this journey with you. And I want us to grow. I want us to go deeper. Right now, we may be facing some challenges, but I'm so glad that I get to face this with you. But with
Mm,
that being said, there's some things that have been happening lately and it's coming up. And in some cases, because we know when it's more us than them. And that's something that I ask if emotion is energy in motion, which means it's based on my thought. Whatever my focus goes to, that's where my energy is going to flow from. And so that's another thing before we communicate things, really ask ourselves, okay, what am I focusing on right now? What am I judging? What am I critiquing? Is this a product of old programming or is this a product of something that I've been experiencing and I haven't opened my mouth to communicate? Because it's going to change the way we respond to it. And this is all emotional intelligence 101. Because I know for me, it was very important to have a partner that was very emotionally intelligent, not reactive, but who could slow down, process, and then come to me from a space of this is what's coming up for me. This is what I'm feeling. And in some cases, she would say, well, when you did this, I felt this way. And again, man, don't take that personally. Really assess yourself. Could I have shown up differently? Could I have said this differently? Is this a valid concern? Because how I've responded in the past, this wasn't an issue, but this is a new experience. So how I respond with my partner now may not be in alignment with who I've been and how I've showed up. It's an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity, again, to look into the mirror, self-reflect, and step forward. And I know you and Roger are doing a lot of that. I've had chances to have conversations with him, and now getting to meet you. You both are such a beautiful couple. And the work that you guys are going to do together, I know it's early in this baby. The baby, oh man, that's another mirror. That's probably going to be the greatest mirror either of you ever experience. Especially as they get older and start expressing themselves, and you start seeing the mirror of how you respond to things through them. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. I often say my kids are my greatest teachers. I've learned so much from my children because I saw so much of myself. But what I can say is because I continue to grow with each one of my kids, each one of them reflects now the best parts of me. And so, yeah, there's definitely a journey ahead, and I'm just excited to stay connected to you guys. Maybe we'll have to host a retreat together or something at some point. That would be awesome.
I was going to say that it's funny that you say that your kids are your greatest teachers, because one of my friends asked me, like, why do you want to become a mom so bad? Because basically to make it short, we had trouble conceiving. So we were trying to conceive for a year, and I started having these questions of like, why do I want a baby so bad? And I thought about it and I contemplated on it. And my answer to that was because I wanted to meet my greatest teacher. And so I met my greatest teacher. And when I was going through my postpartum, my husband's like, do you remember you wanted to meet your greatest teacher? She's here.
Ta-da. Well,
like,
listen, right. I look so forward to seeing what you guys give birth to and what you give birth to, the women that you help, the men that he helps, and collectively the relationships that you guys help other people to forge moving forward. And I know there's people who are listening right now and they're like, how can I reach out to you, Kristen? How can I connect with her? What resources are available? What would be the best way for them to currently reach out to you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram. It's at Lee Mancerian. It's both my last name, my husband's last name. I believe that I'm really building a legacy on both of our sides. And then you can also find me at the Elysian Retreat. That's our retreat space. And both on Instagram, you can visit our website at theelysianretreat.com. And I'm sure Princeton will drop all of those in the show notes. Yeah, I'm excited. We are definitely evolving. There's so many exciting projects that are being born. We're opening up a shop in our retreat space literally next month, where I'm curating very intentional wellness products, both for men and women, to the version of them that they're becoming. And so I'm very picky. So I know that these products will really be not just a product itself, but an extension of whoever is using it. So I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. There you have it, Evolve Mastery family. Kristen, I could literally sit here and talk to you all day. But if you've been tuning in today, as I always say, share the wealth of wisdom, share the experience, promote it to the people in your life, share with those who maybe are experiencing some of what we've discussed. Help us shine our light more extensively in the world. And as Kristen shared her information, everything will be in the show notes. So reach out to her, ask questions, connect. If you want to host a retreat or you want to be a part of an upcoming retreat, make sure you connect with her. All her links will be on her socials and you'll be able to find everything. And again, they will also be in the show notes. But as you guys know, if you're out there, the Evolve Mastery family, every step we take, every opportunity for growth we receive, we're all evolving. And so the more we learn to love ourselves, the more we learn to honor the experiences, the more we learn to pause, the more we learn to give ourselves space and grace in the opportunities that are presented for us to love, for us to create more joy, for us to create more peace. The more we can evolve, the more we can grow. Don't be hard on yourself. We're all facing and experiencing something. It's like the quote says, everybody's fighting a battle you know nothing about. And when we can see those battles as, again, opportunities for growth, and we can learn to honor the experiences of those around us, while also, I have to throw this in there, creating healthy boundaries to understand when and when they're not able to be in our space. We create those boundaries, but still honor the journey. I always say I love everybody, but some people I got to love from a distance because they just are where they are, and I honor their journey. Guys, we're evolving together. And the more of us that choose love, the more of us that choose to connect, the more of us that choose to do the work of self-mastery, the more light we can add to the world. But thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Evolved Mastery. More to come. And if you have any questions for me, reach out to me at PrincetonClark.com or across social media at Princeton Clark on Instagram, TikTok, and also on Facebook. But thank you guys for tuning in, sending you guys lots of love, and I'll be talking to you guys again soon.